Heyo everybody, Haku here with my review for Cleopatra from 1970 from Mushi Productions, directed by Tezuka Osamu and Yamamoto Eiichi, and you'll have to bear with me just a little bit here at the beginning because this is my first review of a 70s anime, and I want to do a little bit of an intro here to explain how I got to this point. So I've been watching stuff from the 80s, doing kind of an 80s project, made an 80s watch list to go through, and as part of that I had the original Gundam. But that's kind of more in the 70s than the 80s. And another thing on my 80s watch list was Violence Jack. And people told me, hey, you should watch Devilman before you watch Violence Jack. And between the two of them, it's like, okay, well, there's two 70s anime already. So I went back through all of the 70s, looked at every anime I could, and kind of tried to bring together all of what I wanted to watch now, at least. And I've got a list of around 10 to 15 anime that I'll watch now. Now I might watch more at some point in my life if I live long enough, but at least for right now I'll do 10 to 15. I mean, I have nearly 100 depending on how many I drop or don't drop going through the 80s, but in the 70s there weren't as many anime. It's not like now where we're getting like 80 some new anime every single season. There weren't as many, and in addition to there just being a smaller number overall, there weren't as many that I was personally interested in. And then I had my list probably closer to like 30 of what I was maybe interested in. And then I was like, okay, I need to go through all official, and you know, I'm usually not watching official, all unofficial sources, and try to find all of it. Try to see how available it was. Going to multiple different sources, and even going to multiple different sources, there were a lot of shows that are just kind of partially lost. Like some where there's a couple episodes here and there, but it was tough to find every single episode. And then there's one notable exclusion, which was Ashita no Joe, which is pretty famous, pretty popular, and it's a little on the longer side. I will, again, if I live long enough, maybe watch it someday, but I wasn't really feeling it right now, so it's not on my watch list for right now. So I've got around 10 to 15 shows and movies that I'll be covering, and Cleopatra was the first I finished. Technically, this is part of sort of a three-part series, kind of, with 1001 Nights coming first, but I found that one, that also came out in the 60s, but I found that one harder to find in its full entirety. So I didn't watch 1001 Nights, I'm sorry. And then Cleopatra, and then there will be another that I will maybe watch this weekend, and you'll maybe get another review from the 70s next week. We'll see. I also started Sasurai no Taiyo already. I started Devilman. I'm like halfway through Gundam, so watching all of those. You'll get reviews for those eventually. So I just wanted to give you that little bit of intro here and also explain sort of the way that these reviews are going to happen. I do not approach my reviews as some sort of film snob. I'm not fart huffing. I'm not, acting as if I'm some sort of authority figure. What I like to do is watch something, and I don't even have any notes for this, just give you my thoughts and opinions in as much detail as I can muster on what I watched, and with the target in mind of, if this is something that you've already seen, I hope that you appreciate and are entertained by my thoughts and opinions on it. And if this is something that you haven't watched, which for a lot of things that I end up reviewing, I usually go for more niche things. A lot of people watching this maybe haven't. If it is something you haven't watched yourself, hopefully, again, you're still entertained by my thoughts and opinions and all, but hopefully this serves as a good recommendation for you for, if it sounds like something you're interested in, to go check it out yourself. So to get now finally into the actual anime itself, this is an around 2 hour, little bit shorter than 2 hour film from fall 1970. Again, I mentioned it was by Mushi Productions and directed by Tezuka Osamu and by Yamamoto Eiichi. And it is a kind of historical retelling of the stories of, the story of Cleopatra mainly, but also Julius Caesar, Mark Antony, all of that. And it is very, very interesting. It's known for being a bit avant-garde and experimental, and it's not that crazy. It's pretty contained for the most part. It's just got a bit of the silliness that you see from a lot of animation from all over the world during this time frame. There's a lot of European animated movies from this time frame that are pretty avant-garde as well. But I also don't want to downplay just how creative and how cool this is. And that's something that I personally appreciate. For me, I will put entertainment and creativity and stuff like that. I'll value that and I'll enjoy that usually more than just raw quality, so to speak. And that's how I felt starting out with this. Starting out, I'm like, this is so creative. I am enjoying how wild and wacky and all over the place this is. But at first I was like, the quality varies. And even at the end, I guess the quality does vary. But one thing that I appreciated is as I kept watching, as I went along toward the end, I was like, no, actually, this is really good too. When it comes to like the pure animation quality, once again, you're going to get what you get with older stuff, and even what you get with stuff nowadays, where there are certain scenes and segments that are really good. They look really nice. The animation, really good. There's this one fight scene with a couple soldiers that's really good. But more, it's more on the creative side of things where I think this shines, where I think its strong point is. And there are also scenes where you can tell they swung for the fences. They tried something. Again, this is still sort of in the earlier days of animated film. Of course, we had animated films for a decade, but in terms of the amount that had been put out by this time, it's on the lower end. And this, in addition to that, most were sort of general audience or even aimed at children, and this is specifically going for an adult audience. They wanted blood and violence and sex scenes, and specifically compared to their last film, they were going for a more erotic tone. And sometimes the sexual aspects can be a bit silly because sometimes there's a very Looney Tunes-esque comedy with it all. One thing that I just remembered thinking about all this, again, I'm just going off the top of my head with all of this, was this scene where they're like, yes, we'll poison them and give them all diarrhea. So there are diarrhea jokes with Caesar. And it reminds me that of so many of the 70s and 80s anime that I've watched so far, lots of diarrhea jokes. What they love, there's also lots of exposed boobs, lots of nipples in all of what I've watched from the 70s and 80s. If the Japanese in the 70s and 80s love two things, it's nipples and diarrhea jokes. It's just weirdly common how many diarrhea jokes I've seen thus far. But the characters themselves were very interesting. I thought that Apollodorus was a really interesting character. Cleopatra, of course, being the main lead. Julius Caesar, the portrayal of him was really cool. And then towards the end, when we got a bit of Octavian toward the end, Octavian was really threatening and just such an interesting, cool animated character, kind of antagonistic force at the end. And then Antonius, I did not expect much when we were transitioning to him in sort of a leading role toward the second half of the movie, but he was maybe one of my favorite characters. I thought all of that, he was funny and they really made me feel for him. The comedy here was all over the place, but there were so many scenes that were really, really fun. Everything they did with the gun was so funny. There were constantly cuts and references to just anachronisms, which again is used for the funny. There's one part where somebody says something like, "Oh, who will save us?" or something along those lines, and there's just like a 2 or 3 second cut of Astro Boy flying around. And we never bring that up again. Just a reference to, hey, Tezuka did this. It is so fun and interesting and different. And I think the use of violence and eroticism and more adult topics is really interesting. And I love that it's just not filtered. We just see things. And that's something that, again, when I'm getting into this older stuff, this 70s and 80s anime, that I've really appreciated, that I almost didn't know how much we were missing it in modern, not just anime, but everything. Like, there are times when there are just panty shots or nudity that I'm like, yeah, this makes sense. Whereas if it was in a modern, again, just using anime for example, there'd be this weird convenient censorship or god rays that kind of, in comparison now, take you out of it. And you wouldn't necessarily think that much, but again, going back and watching this older stuff, I just I appreciate the nudity. I appreciate that it doesn't hold back on these things. In the way that sex scenes were portrayed artistically, whether it was the Cleopatra Caesar one or Cleopatra Antonius, Cleopatra Apollodoria, all of those three, the way that sex was presented differently between the three of them, and the way that, again, through animation and music, they were able to convey things was so creative and interesting. And I think that, again, there are some scenes, there are some cuts of animation that they swung and they kind of missed, but there are some that I think they did a really great job with it, both looking and sounding good, but also being very creative. But there are also things, again, like all of the gun stuff that was very funny, because our main story, really, we start off in a live action with animated filters and faces over them, essentially. We start off with a segment like that. And from the very beginning, it's super creative like that. And they basically go use the Animus to relive some memories they came up with Assassin's Creed a few decades early, to go back to like Ionius and the pet leopard or jaguar or whatever. And oh gosh, I forget the other female character, Libya. They go back to sort of live in their bodies and see this from their perspective. All of that was really just creative and well done. Again, from start to finish, I think the ending. I also want to bring up the ending. The ending was good. The ending really won me over. I was like, okay, this is a good movie. So I think I'm stretching at this point. I don't think I have much else to say, but if you want to watch it, check it out yourself. Again, it is a good sort of adult-oriented animated film. You're going to get some like old school jank, but also in a good way, and you're going to get old school sensibilities in both a depending on the person you are, positive and negative way. But I just really, really, really like and appreciate the creativity and how interesting it is. And that's something that I appreciate a lot from Tezuka, not only being one of the first sort of big names in anime and manga, but also all of Tezuka's stuff that I've seen or read up to this point in my life has just been really good. Like, the quality is good, and the level of risk taking and creativity to just be like, hey, let's do this, is so cool. So yeah, I appreciated the film a lot. I liked it a lot. And there will be more to come from the 70s and 80s, and also from modern stuff. I have so many modern reviews to catch up to. I have like 36 that I need to post at some point. But I wanted to do this since I had just watched it and it was fresh in my mind. That said, with reviews, I usually do a favorite character, a favorite waifu, and a favorite relationship. And that in this is going to be a little bit tough. As far as characters go, I mentioned I like a lot of them. Like, Ionius is interesting and all. So the plans of the sort of Egyptian freedom fighters and all, not great plans. Like, Caesar and Cleopatra have basically kind of made peace here, but they're like, yes, if we assassinate Caesar, then they'll leave the Egyptians alone. And I'm like, what? Why wouldn't the Romans just start killing you all if you killed their Caesar or whatever? And we see later on that when they do things like that, they're like, yeah, let's go kill the Egyptians. It's like, yeah, what was your plan here? Like, peace was kind of the way to go, because you're just going to, like, why are you kicking the beehive of the Roman Empire of all things? But not the strongest plans on their part. But as far as characters go, I thought that Antonius was great, Caesar was great, Octavian was great, Apollodoria and Cleopatra. I think favorite character I will give to Cleopatra, just as kind of the lead here. I also thought it was funny how they're like, you'll be the most beautiful in the land and all. And then they give her them big reds. You've seen people complain or talk about anime donut lips. She had them anime hot dog lips. I will say, I think she was maybe my favorite character. She was very interesting in how her story kind of... She wasn't even really the protagonist. The people who went back in time were sort of the protagonists. They were just... She was just the central part of the story, the central character that all of these other parts were rotating around, and she was kind of just caught up in the waves and kind of being thrown from one thing to the next. And I think the way she was written was really cool and interesting along with all the others. Favorite relationship? I will actually go for Cleopatra and Antonius. I really kind of felt for them toward the end. It felt like, you know, he was actually one of the only men she seemed to really, really care about. And I felt for him as a character because he as well, he was also kind of like Cleopatra, where he's just getting thrown into the midst of all of this. And their tragedy is also kind of goofy Looney Tunes comedied up, which, you know, just keeps it from being too dark, and it was fun. And yeah, their relationship, as far as best waifu goes, is that Cleopatra's? I mean, there's not like a ton of options. I would say just the random mayor's daughter from like the beginning, or like some of just the random topless women that we see throughout it probably look better than Cleopatra. I don't know. But either way, I'll end this here. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Bit of a mess, bit all over the place, but that's what you get with me. Either way, though, thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Like if you did like the video, comment down there. Tell me what you thought of the movie if you have seen it, or what you thought of my thoughts and all of that. Subscribe for more anime, much more on the channel. If you want to help support the channel by dropping a super thanks or sharing around, it's appreciated. If you want to help support the channel by becoming a member or patron, you get One Piece Bingo a bit early and get your name at the end of videos. So thank you to people who are already members and patrons. Thank you to chosen regulars Evan Hawley and Bertie Wooster, Magical Girls, DD-Ban and Tomorrow, Jerton Student, David Langstaff, Slayer Candidates, SG and Stance Eater, and Pure Element Paterial. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all next time.